I don't own any Berkshire Hathaway shares, directly anyway, nor have I ever attended a Berkshire Hathaway meeting. But I've come to admire Warren Buffett. I admire him for his business sense, of course, his investing sense, and I look to him for investing wisdom, especially in uncertain times. And these days, it seems like we're always in uncertain times. Now, if you don't think you're invested in Berkshire Hathaway at all, think again. Because if you're invested in any type of broad market index fund, you've got some Berkshire. In fact, Vanguard's S&P 500 fund holds over 2% in Berkshire Hathaway, and VTI is not far behind it at 1.75% of the fund. So for every $10,000 that you invest into a broad market index fund, roughly $200 of that is being invested into Berkshire. So as a company, Berkshire Hathaway is important just due to its size alone. But even more important than Berkshire Hathaway is Warren Buffett himself. The fact that he's still doing what he's been doing for his whole life and still going strong at age 94, it's incredible. And he can still pack them in, and people of all ages continue to hang on his every word. Not only is Warren Buffett still coherent, he is sharp, insightful, and sometimes even funny.
I mean, all the records are held by females in terms of age, and I tried to get Charlie to have a sex change so he could test out whether.
And I pay attention to what he says at the annual shareholders meeting and what he writes in his letter to shareholders, because I like to know what Buffett thinks about what's happening right here, right now, because he has that long-term perspective with lots of experience under his belt over many decades. He's a wise investor, a wise person, and can give us some perspective on the business climate in America. And I think we need that perspective more than ever right now. And to be honest, the real reason that I tune into Buffett is for a dose of optimism.
You know, you're lucky enough to, you're here today, you're healthy, you've come from a long distance, and you're getting a chance to learn more about something that interests you, and compare that with the situation a couple hundred years ago that you would have been offered. So anyway, that's enough moralizing.
I crave that optimism that he so often provides, and that's why I'm more likely to pay close attention to what he's saying and doing when things are more uncertain. Because pretty much every time I've read Buffett's letter to shareholders or listened to him field questions at the annual shareholders meeting, I come away from those things feeling more optimistic. I end up feeling even better about investing in the US stock market, and I end up feeling luckier about who I am than I did before. So that's what keeps me coming back year after year, tuning in to what he has to say, and not to mention that at age 94, his time with us is unfortunately limited. Now, this year's Berkshire meeting was significant because Buffett made the surprise announcement at the end of the meeting that he is stepping down as CEO at the end of the year. I kind of see this as Buffett's Yoda moment.
The time has arrived where Greg should become the chief executive officer of the company at year end, and I want to spring that on the directors effectively and then give that as my recommendation.
When gone am I, the last of the Jedi will you be?
So Buffett will step down as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway at the end of the year, passing the torch over to Greg Abel, who we hope is able to continue to lead Berkshire to great heights. And I think this was a good idea of Buffett to announce this now, while there's still plenty of time in the year for him to continue to be CEO. And even after the end of the year, he will continue to hang around in the wings. He will continue to be chairman of the board. He will continue to be there, I'm sure, every single day, offering his advice, his wisdom, his expertise. And rather than waiting and reaching a point to where he can't literally can't be CEO anymore because of declining health or whatever. He's passing the torch now, getting Greg in there while Buffett can remain close by, giving him the support along the way and giving investors confidence that Abel is able to do the job. Now, in addition to this moment of Buffett passing the torch, I noted 3 lessons from this Q&A session that we can learn. And perhaps these aren't new lessons to any of us. Maybe they're more like reminders, because sometimes we have to learn the same lessons over and over before they stick. The first lesson has to do with the recent market volatility that we've experienced over tariffs and the like. And Buffett reminds us that this recent market downturn is, in his words, really nothing.
What has happened in the last 30, 45 days, 100 days, whatever you want to pick up, whatever this period has been, is really nothing.
Now, Buffett has a great point here. It's true that at our low last month, we were 19% off all-time highs, and that is a pretty big move. That felt terrible to most of us long-term investors. But as I speak, we are now down not even 5% year to date. 5%, that is truly nothing. Buffett notes that there are 3 times in its history where Berkshire Hathaway has gone down by 50% or more. So 5%? This is not anything to even sneeze at. So what we've experienced recently is not a huge move. And as Buffett notes, if the market had gone up 15% instead of down 15%, people wouldn't think much of that at all. It would be like, yep, that's about right. The market should be going up 15%. But when the market goes down 15%, well, they freak out.
If it's going up 15% instead of down 15%, people think they take that with remarkable grace. But
I love how Buffett says that if down 15% makes a difference to you,
if it makes a difference to you whether your stocks are down 15% or not, you need to get a somewhat different investment philosophy.
that is perfectly said from the Yoda of investing. Of course, crazy things can happen. As he notes, that's the stock market.
That's part of the stock market, and that's what makes it a good place to focus your efforts if you've got the proper temperament for it, and a terrible place to get involved if you get frightened by markets that decline and get excited when stock markets go up.
That's why you get those big returns over the long run, because you take the risk in the short term. And that's what makes the stock market a good place to invest if you can handle the volatility. Buffett notes that
people have emotions, but you got to check them at the door when you invest.
And of course, that's easier said than done. So this is great perspective. But for me personally, I think it was the speed of the downward move that we experienced in April. And as always, the potential for further damage, further down moves that really had me scared and still has me concerned to some degree. But this Buffett guy has a lot more investment experience than any of us, and I think we should take his wisdom to heart. For me, this would also be easier if I wasn't looking to retire early any day now. If I was still firmly in my accumulation phase of investing with retirement still 10 years or more away, it would be much easier to see this as a buying opportunity rather than a rug pull here at the finish line. But this is much needed perspective for me, a great reminder that despite all the chaos and consternation caused by our president, from a long-term market perspective, it's barely a blip on the radar. The second lesson I took away from this meeting was that America is still the place to be. Still the place to be, literally, physically to be here, and the place to invest. So there was this question posed to Buffett about American exceptionalism and if America is losing it. Buffett's answer is basically that America is still exceptional and we are still lucky to be born in the United States or to live in the United States.
The luckiest day in my life was the day I was born. Because I was born in the United States.
He notes that America started from nothing. It was an agricultural society, and it came to dominate the world economically, although we are, of course, still very much a work in progress.
We're always in the process of change. We'll always find all kinds of things to criticize in the country. But the luckiest day in my life was the day I was born. 'Cause I was born in the United States. We've gone through all kinds of things. And we've gone through great recessions. We've gone through world wars. We've gone through the development of an atomic bomb. I would not get discouraged about the fact that it doesn't look like it. We've solved every problem that's come along. And if I were being born today, I would just keep negotiating in the womb until they said you can be in the United States. So we're all pretty lucky.
Buffett says that we are always in the process of change. We will always find something to criticize in the country, but the luckiest day of my life is the day I was born. This is a recurring theme with him. In Buffett's 2015 annual letter to shareholders, he expressed his optimism about America's future, stating the babies being born in America today are the luckiest crop in history. He challenged the prevailing pessimism during that election year, asserting that concerns about the next generation's prospects were unfounded. Buffett highlighted that the U.S. GDP per capita had reached approximately $56,000, which is a six-fold increase from 1930, the year he was born. He emphasized the nation's economic progress and the opportunities available to its citizens. While Buffett acknowledges challenges like income inequality and global threats, he maintains a bullish outlook on America's capacity for innovation and growth. He believes that the nation's economic golden goose will continue to lay golden eggs, producing benefits for future generations. And I find that it's very nice to know that he still feels this way. The third lesson that I took away from this meeting was about passive investing, and that we passive investors are still on the right track. Buffett talks about passive investing versus what Berkshire does and what they are doing sitting on $335 billion in cash. The reason they have all this cash on the sidelines is that they think they can do a little better. But that's what they do professionally. For decades, that's Berkshire's thing, is to try to do a little better than the market.
We have made a lot of money by not wanting to be fully invested at all times. And we don't think it's improper, actually, for people who are passive investors just to make a few simple investments and sit for their life in them. But we've made the decision to be in the business, so we think we can do a little better than that.
They are in that business. They obsess over it and work at that every single day, year after year. But we passive investors, we got a life to live. We can't sit around obsessing over balance sheets and income statements. And in Buffett's words, he says, we don't think it's improper for passive investors to make a few simple investments and sit for their life in them. So my takeaway, or what I think he's trying to say here, is that they have a bunch of cash on the sidelines because they're Berkshire Hathaway. But for passive investors like us, or if he was just a passive investor, he would be putting that to work in a few simple investments, like maybe a 3-fund portfolio that he could sit with for his entire life. So I think the point is, us passive investors need to continue to stay the course. And I don't know, maybe if you want a slight edge, invest in Berkshire Hathaway. Passive investors should stick to our plan for the long term because no one knows anything about the short and medium term outlook for stocks.
The long-term trend is up. Nobody knows what the market is going to do tomorrow, next week, next month, and nobody knows what business is going to do tomorrow, next week, or next month. But they spend all their time talking about it because it's easy to talk about, but it has no value. I've never found anybody I want to listen to on the subject. And
again, Buffett notes that no one knows what's going to happen with stocks in the short or medium term, and yet they talk and talk about it endlessly, and turns out none of that talk matters. So the lesson here, it's time to stop thinking about and listening to others talk endlessly about stock valuations or what's making the markets move, because no one knows the short or medium term, and there are more important things to focus on in our lives, to maybe work on earning more or increasing our happiness or our fulfillment.
I think a happy person lives longer than somebody that's doing some things that they don't really admire that much in life.
So those are the 3 lessons that I took away from Warren Buffett's Q&A session at the annual shareholders meeting. If you enjoyed this video or got something out of it, please give it a like. Consider subscribing to my channel if you haven't already. And for more on Warren Buffett and how he tap dances to work every day, you can check out this video right here.